safe and healthy during this uncertain times.
Recording in
Today,
progress.
it is our great honor to have Dr. Said Sila from Mali to join us. Dr. Said Sila is the rector of University of Sahel in Bamako, Mali, and he's also a Secretary General of Union of African Ulamas. And he has been a great voice to advocating peace and tolerance and coexistence in Africa and in Mali. And he got his PhD in Quranic studies from Islam University in Medina in Saudi Arabia. So today he will bring us a good topic that everybody are interested here, is the role of Muslim scholars in knowledge in Africa, role of Muslim scholars and knowledge in Africa. So we will hear from him his sharing. And this lecture is broadcast live on YouTube and Facebook in both Arabic and English. So just choose your channel for the respective language. And if you have any questions at the end of the lecture, so hope we will have questions about for 10 minutes. You can write your question on Facebook or on YouTube, and we will take it from there. Okay, without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Said Sila to give us a lecture.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Peace be with all of you. In the name of Almighty Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful. Praise be to Almighty Allah. And peace be upon Prophet Muhammad and all his family members and companions. It is an honor and a pleasure to be with you in this wonderful gathering. In the context of this webinar, which is being organized by the World Muslim Communities Council from its headquarters in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. I am speaking to you from Bamako, from Mali, in Western Africa. I would like to greet everyone, wherever they are, in all over the continents of the world. I would like to welcome you to this lecture, which is entitled, as highlighted, the contributions of Muslim scholars to the development of knowledge in Africa. We want to ensure that our discussion today is highly condensed and focused in the interest of time. That is why I will not take up a very extended introduction. However, we have to first and foremost express our appreciation to the organizers of this webinar. I would like to express my appreciation and gratitude to His Excellency, the Chairman of the World Muslim Communities Council, His Excellency Dr. Ali Rashid Al-Naimi, and to His Excellency the Secretary General of the World Muslim Communities Council, Dr. Muhammad Al-Bashari, and to the researchers and the assistants and the members of the World Muslim Communities Council. When we speak of Muslim scholars' contribution and their contribution to the knowledge in Africa, first, we need to determine the terms that we use here. When in Africa speak of scholars' contribution, Africa is a continent, and it's a famous continent. But when we speak in this framework, it may be noteworthy to maintain our focus to determine and to limit the definition of this term. When we speak of Africa as a continent, it is a continent that encompasses all African countries, which are members of the African Union, including Arab nations and Arab nations that have Islamic centers, particularly Egypt, Tunisia, and Morocco, and their long-standing universities. Therefore, if we speak in this general way, we may not reach the information that we seek. So in this lecture, we will focus on the framework of our discussion today about Sub-Saharan Africa. Sub-Saharan Africa. It's called Sub-Saharan Africa region. Therefore, when we speak of Egypt and the Al-Azhar University and the Zaytuna University in Tunisia and the Al-Khawarizmi University in Morocco, and scholars since the dawn of Islam, of course, have had great contributions, but this is not the title of our discussion. In today's webinar, Sub-Saharan Africa, where we have 47 countries. So we wanted to focus on this particular topic. This is the first point. The second point, when we speak of Muslim scholars in Africa, it is noteworthy to speak of the religious map in Africa. And once again, we are talking about Sub-Saharan Africa. When we say Sub-Saharan Africa, we have excluded by this term Northern African Arab countries, starting from Sudan and Egypt all the way to Morocco, and including even Mauritania. So we exclude those countries in the scope of our discussion. They have a Muslim majority, either 100% or almost 100% Muslim population. But when we speak about Sub-Saharan Africa, the religious map is diverse. There are no official statistics, whether by continental organizations or the countries themselves. The religious map for most of these countries, either they don't care about that religious map or do not believe that it is beneficial for them to report such figures. In general, we can say that in Sub-Saharan Africa, the religious map is made up of Muslims in some regions. There are pure Muslim regions or a mix of Muslims and Christians, and the so-called the traditional beliefs supporters of those who embrace traditional beliefs. So all of these religions exist in those countries. So in a single country, you will have all of these religious backgrounds. And the percentages are disproportionately distributed from one region to another. So in some countries, you will find that there is a very high rate of Muslims in some countries, such as Morocco Islands, such as Comoro Islands and Somalia. Comoro Islands and Somalia, we have almost 100% of Muslim population. But in some other countries, we have very high percentage of Christians, where Islam was adopted more recently. And you will see the traditional beliefs more widely spread in many of those countries. So this is a very quick overview of the religious map of Sub-Saharan Africa. Based on that, we start speaking of Islam, because when we talk about Muslim scholars, we need to highlight that Islam in Africa, and the history of Islam in Africa, is a very big topic. And we want to focus on specific items only. How Islam, of course, entered Africa a long time ago, when we mean the first spread of Islam. Because if it's not about the spread of Islam, this was actually started in the Meccan era, when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was in Mecca before even immigrating to Medina, because in this context, some people say Islam reached Africa before reaching Medina. And this is, as we know, in the prophetic tradition. And in the prophetic tradition, we see that the Muhajirin, or early Muslim immigrants, traveled and emigrated to Abyssinia. But they settled in Abyssinia. However, Islam did not spread at that point of time. Most of them, or all of them, returned to either to Mecca or Medina. Or after that, immigrated, after Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, immigrated to Medina, they joined him in Medina. So, this first entry of Islam to Africa was not accompanied by a widespread of Islam in Africa. However, Islam entered Africa also in a more widespread way in the first century of Islam, starting from the time of the era of Umar radiallahu anhu, and then reaching the Umayyad era, and then Islam spread in that area from the north all the way to the south in the first century of Hijrah. And in the second century of Hijrah, Islam spread even further. This was the first stage, or the first time, when Islam entered Africa, from the north of Africa to the south of Africa, particularly in the areas which represent today countries that are called the coastal countries, Mauritania, Mali, Niger, all the way to Chad. So Islam spread in those countries, starting by traders and merchants, Muslim merchants in the first and the second century of Hijrah. It spread in many areas. However, the more widespread wave of Islam was in the 5th to the 9th century of Hijrah, when major Islamic kingdoms were established in those countries. When we move eastward, we will find that Islam also entered sub-Saharan Africa through the Eastern Front. We can start from Sudan all the way down to the south, particularly when we reach countries like Kenya, Tanzania, all the way to Comoro Island and Mozambique. So Islam entered these countries, particularly under the Omani rule of those countries, and spread very widely in that era. And it entered into those countries all the way to the middle, or actually Central Africa, all the way to Central Africa. This is the second gateway. In the recent times, during the past 2 centuries, Islam spread in Central Africa and South Africa through immigrations of Muslims from African countries into others, and reached Central Africa, reached countries such as Congo Brazzaville, and Angola and Gabon, and all of those countries. Islam entered them from the east, but now it is spreading through those immigrants, traders and merchants who settled in those countries earlier. Even in Africa, in South Africa, and Zimbabwe and Botswana, Islam spread through some immigration waves, as we had Indonesians coming during the Portuguese occupation of those countries, and then Muslims from reached the Indian subcontinent and came all the way to Zambia and to these countries in Africa. However, we have had also other immigrants from other African countries. Even currently, we see some Somali expatriate groups that have had an impact in spreading Islam to those countries. So, this is as far as Islam entrance into Africa is concerned. Of course, I want to be brief, because this topic in itself can constitute substance for a 1 hour or 2 hours webinar. It is even a topic of study in the university. And the history of Islam in Africa, we at the African Muslim Scholars Union, we are studying the history of Islam in Africa to become more like an encyclopedia that will be beneficial to university and university students, to provide the academic standards in this process. However, This is a very quick overview of how Islam entered Africa. Moving on to the role of Muslim scholars and their contribution to knowledge. If you want to speak of this topic, we also need to get back to the historic background. Sub-Saharan Africa has had major scholars, major Muslim scholars and prominent Muslim scholars who developed knowledge there. We are saying that we focus on knowledge which is associated with Sharia sciences, including Quran, Sunnah, Fiqh, including even linguistic sciences and history. As we will highlight later on, Muslim scholars have had their contributions to the knowledge of sciences such as history, geography, and astronomy, and algebra, and all the other great sciences that Muslim scholars contributed to in that region. So when we speak of scholars, Muslim scholars who have had a major role as part of the widespread scientific movement in the Islamic world back then, during the period from the 7th century of Hijrah to the 10th and 11th century of Hijrah, we will see that there have been prominent scholars in those areas, particularly in West Africa and East Africa as well. I know that those who follow this or those who are watching this webinar are watching us from all over Africa and even from outside Africa. But in most of the examples, we focus on West Africa, and we have examples also in East Africa. When we speak of Muslim scholars, we may refer to a number of famous scholars. Maybe you've heard of some of them, or maybe you haven't, such as when we speak of Ahmad Baba al-Tumukti. It's a very famous name in terms of knowledge, a very prominent scientific and knowledgeable scholar who made great contributions to boosting knowledge. He's had his own books, and his books were not limited to Sub-Saharan Africa only. They reached all the way to North Africa and even outside the scope of Africa. He wrote the book Nail al-Ijtihad Batadis al-Jihad and other prominent books as well. So this name has become a very renowned and famous name for a famous scholar from the region all the way to the whole world. We find many international libraries which have manuscripts, and there is reference to this scholar and to the library in Timbuktu, which was named after this scholar, Ahmad Baba Center for Islamic Studies. Moreover, there are other scholars who have had a major impact in spreading knowledge and developing knowledge, including Mahmoud Kat, who wrote Tarikh al-Fatash and who wrote the history of Sudan al-Sa'di. And also in the region, we have Abdullah al-Tanfudio, the brother of Uthman Tanfudio, who established this Islamic empire in Al-Hawsa countries and the adjacent ones. His brother wrote many books which spread in the region and even spread outside the region. Moreover, to the east of Africa, we've had scholars who had enriched knowledge in Africa in at those times, and even outside those times, as some of them settled, particularly in Al-Haramain, or the two holy shrines, and they taught many people, including people who settled in the two holy shrines, and people who came from distant countries such as India and other countries. So this is the history of Islam and how Muslim scholars spread knowledge in the region. There are many historic examples. These are only quick examples. Apart from this side, we may move on to discuss the development of knowledge. There were centers, renowned scientific centers in those regions in Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. the scholars played a major role in developing knowledge through these highly important regions, such as, for instance, in East Africa, we had Harar, we had Abyssinia, and all the way to Zanzibar and to Comor Island. We've had students coming from other regions to obtain knowledge and to spread knowledge as well. If we speak of the West as well, we will see that there have been very famous regions, and they have made it all the way to the international arena, such as Timbuktu, Jerna, and Zaria, and all of these famous cities. If we focus on Timbuktu, for instance, we will see that the Timbuktu was early well known as a knowledge center in Africa and even outside Africa. Today, we still find in some African or non-African countries, if you mention the name of, if you say, I'm from Mali, they may ask you, but when you speak of Timbuktu, most people know Timbuktu. In one of my journeys to South Africa, I met someone, and at that time, the president of South Africa was Thabo Mbeki, and South Africa has adopted an initiative to revive the heritage in Timbuktu. I said, what has made Timbuktu so famous in all the way to South Africa? Although South Africa does not have a Muslim majority. They told me that this is an ancient history of this great city, Timbuktu. And it's not limited to the spread of Islam. It goes all the way to ancient history, including the traditional heritage. They say, if you are sending someone somewhere, they say you should go anywhere to find a remedy for him, even if you'll have to go to Timbuktu. They consider it a famous but distant city. So it is very important, and through that, to spread knowledge. To spread knowledge, as we said previously, we focused on Islamic sciences, the Holy Quran, and the interpretation of the Holy Quran and the Sunnah, and the interpretation of the Sunnah and fiqh. After that, we also have humanities. In the library of Ahmad Baba, the Timbuktu scholar, we have books that were written by scholars that spread to most countries. And also in algebra also, we have many books in this regard, and also in astronomy. And there were many books in astronomy that were made or written by those scholars, and we still have them, and their indexes are still available as part of Ahmed Baba Library and other such libraries, and they still have linkages to international libraries through the internet. This is as part of the historic context, which is still continuous. We may discuss modern countries. Africa was also colonized by colonial powers, particularly Britain and France, and Portugal and Spain as well. So, with the waves of independence of those African countries, starting from the 1960s, these countries were shaped and established, and they have had their borders. However, with regards to the ancient Islamic history in this regard, and it has had a major role in the maintenance of this and of the preservation of this heritage of Muslim scholars and contribution to the development of knowledge in these countries. So we also have a scientific research movement. Previously, there were local centers where students would come and then spread knowledge. And with these countries, these modern countries, we have seen the students traveling all the way to other countries to seek knowledge, such as going to the Al-Azhar University in Egypt and the Zaytuna University in Tunisia, and also outside the continent. So there are other countries that they travel to, including the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Asia, such as Malaysia, and then going back to develop knowledge in Africa. So this is something that continues to happen. So there is the development of knowledge in the continent, and this is a highly important point. And now modern scholars are also boosting knowledge through the universities, either through the university that they have established or they are supervising its management. There are many such universities now. For instance, the World Muslim Universities Association, which is associated with the Cisco, or which is also cooperating with the Cisco. These are Muslim or Islamic universities, which is highly important. And recently, this initiative to establish such association in Africa, in collaboration with Africa's World University in Sudan, almost 8 years ago, and still continuous. So registered Islamic universities and high institutes, which were established by highly important scholars, are more than 50 in total. So all of them boost knowledge, and particularly knowledge associated with the Islamic Sharia. And these universities also boost knowledge in terms of humanities. And as pointed out in the introduction by Dr. Yusuf, in addition to my work as the Secretary General of African Muslim Scholars, I'm also the Chancellor of Al-Sahel University. It is a local university established by the community. It's a community university, and we teach economics and legal topics in addition to information technology. This is an example that we have in other countries as well. So we see a major contribution by Muslim scholars in sub-Saharan Africa to spread knowledge through these universities, which they either established themselves or are managing. Now, even one of the universities which was established through these organizations are being managed by Muslim scholars from the African continent, such as the Islamic University in Niger, which is associated with the OIC, and the university in Uganda, which is part of the OIC as well. So this is as far as these universities are concerned. Another point that when we conclude the historic concept, since we need to speak of the modern times. So as for those scholars, particularly the scholars who have received and obtained PhD degrees and postgraduate degrees, and those who are professors at the university, they teach many topics and many fields which have to do with the challenges in African countries and African countries are facing many challenges, some of which are associated with extremism and radicalism, in addition to poverty and tribal conflicts and all of these issues. So, those scholars are making great contributions to the development of knowledge to address some of these challenges. First, this topic, we may refer to a number of points. The first is that spreading the moderate concepts of Islam. This is highly important to counter extremist concepts and ideas which have spread in some communities. So Muslim scholars are playing a major role in this regard. This is one indicator. The second indicator is contributing to social reform. These communities and these countries, modern countries, because of the nature of the arrangements, they are facing major problems. And these major problems lead to the eruption of conflicts, including tribal conflicts or ethnic conflicts or religious conflicts. So scholars are contributing to the development of knowledge to address these negative issues and to ensure that young people are protected from the conflicts which are destroying many areas of this region, particularly the sub-Saharan Africa, starting all the way from Mauritania to Mali to Niger to all the way to Chad, and also the coastal side of Africa from Ethiopia all the way to Somalia down to Mozambique. We can see that there are many disturbances there, and some of which are affiliated with groups that proclaim that they are Muslim groups. So the third point is the Muslim scholars' efforts to develop knowledge and to establish new programs that can target young people in a way that enables them to combine these religious knowledge and Sharia knowledge in addition to humanities and the sciences of engineering, medicine, and sciences to boost the development of these countries. Therefore, scholars are currently conducting many efforts in this regard to deal with these issues either by the organizations they have established or that organizations that were established by their own countries or by international organizations that they are dealing with. We are also dealing with international groups that represent major entities.
يعني الأمين العام للمجمع الفقهي الإسلامي الدولي يعني هو البروفيسور قطب مصطفى سانو، هو من بعض هذه الدول ممن اهتموا كثيرا بإيجاد برامج يجمع بين العلوم الشرعية والمعارف الإنسانية بالنسبة لهذا الجيل.
So we have a great deal of knowledge by this generation to boost the process of these groups and these Muslim scholars who are really projecting a bright image of Islam. This is as far as those of Muslim scholars are concerned and the anticipated role in this regard. Ladies and gentlemen, this lecture on this topic, which covers certain aspects, all of which we are trying to focus on a certain topic. So we may have give more time to questions and answers to highlight certain points. So these remaining minutes, and in terms of the time dedicated to this lecture, we have 45 minutes. I would like to focus on some recommendations based on this quick overview of the contributions of Muslim scholars to the development of knowledge. It's a continent, particularly in this part of Africa, which is called Sub-Saharan Africa. It is as we said, North Africa Northern African countries find themselves as part and members of the African Union, and also with regards to the African Cup and all of these points, speaking of the geographic scope. But I'm talking about Islam to focus mainly on Sub-Saharan Africa. Otherwise, when we speak of Al-Azhar and its contributions, for instance, we may need many lectures to cover that point. So through the remaining time, I have only 10 minutes left. I want to focus on recommendations. So through this quick overview, I want to highlight an important point after this quick overview, which links the historic aspects to the current reality that we live in our countries, in our African countries, and in Sub-Saharan Africa. My first recommendation with these new achievements and these challenges, I believe that it is very important to pay special attention to the students at postgraduate studies in the universities who are specialized in Islamic studies. Universities, whether in universities in Africa or outside Africa. Because the reality that we're facing now, these academic establishments are the ones that should take the lead and take the initiative to confront these challenges. Students studying in those universities are the future hope, present future hope in terms of the scientific development of these communities. We need to pay special attention to them through monitoring them and supporting them and offering them the necessary support. For instance, we in the Muslim Scholars Association Africa, which has 47 countries of Sub-Saharan Africa, we have had a program to gather information about those postgraduate students in the universities who are preparing and who are actually working on the master's degree and the PhD degrees. We are registering their communication information, and through this study, we found that there's a massive number of those students. You cannot find a single entity which pays attention to this point. So I call upon all concerned entities to look into this point. The students studying for their postgraduate degrees, whether in African universities or outside African universities, because they represent the hope for leading the scientific development of these countries and face challenges in Africa. This is the first recommendation. The second recommendation is to pay attention to protect and maintain and preserve the long-standing legacy of Muslim scholars and enable young people to benefit from it. When we say long-standing legacy, specialists know what I'm talking about. We have mentioned some examples of this legacy. Those scholars have introduced major contributions in scientific and research papers. But most of these books are kept by certain libraries in boxes that they were locked up in those boxes so they would not be damaged, and they receive support by some regional international entities to protect those manuscripts. However, protecting them this way is not enough. We must utilize these manuscripts to direct researchers in benefiting from them and to spread the knowledge protected and invested in those manuscripts, and this will boost the morale of those researchers to implement Islamic culture. There are many prominent libraries. Some of the examples that I mentioned focus on West Africa, since I live there. But in other countries, there are other manuscripts programs. However, most of those manuscripts were not used up till now. This is another recommendation that I make as a recommendation that I put forward to Muslim scholars in the African continent and scientific bodies in Africa and outside Africa, and to the establishments that seek to protect this legacy and to seek to benefit from this legacy and spread it and help the new generations to benefit from this. I'm saying this, and this is a reality, because protection of these manuscripts, Islamic organizations have exerted an effort to protect them, whether the ISISCO or the Islamic Cooperation Organization, IOC, and the Sheikh Zayed's establishment as well. And what really tops the list in this regard comes the attention from Western Orientalists who seek to protect and preserve these manuscripts. So this is the second and last recommendation. I've limited the recommendations to 2 only in the interest of time, and I hope that the concerned entities may have clear recommendations to focus on instead of the numerous recommendations that are made and do not really offer anything new and sink into oblivion. So at the end of my quick presentation, once again, I would like to express my appreciation to the World Muslim Communities Council for organizing this initiative. I would like to thank you for following up and watching this program. And in this context, I would like to express my special He was the first individual to start communicating with me in this regard. I would like to express my appreciation to him. We spoke a lot, sometimes in Arabic, which is not maybe fluent in, and sometimes in English. And I would like to thank him also for this and for his time. And I know, of course, I communicated with his assistant, and I would like to thank all the people who have organized this webinar, and I would like to thank you for your time. And I would like to thank all those who are watching us on the social media channels of the World Muslim Communities Council. So this is what we have been focusing on in this brief period, in the 45 minutes that we have. And I'm almost done now, so I will stop at this point. And I would like to thank you very much. And thank you, and peace be with all of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saidu Sila, for this wonderful lecture and very informative. Overview of history of Islam in Africa and contribution of Muslim scholars for knowledge in Africa, especially Sub-Saharan Africa. And also your candid recommendations, 2 recommendations to improve knowledge, education, and spiritual life in Sub-Saharan Africans. Now we have about 15 minutes for Q&A. For those who are on the Zoom now, if you want to ask a question, you can either ask in Arabic or in English. If you ask in Arabic, our translator here will translate your questions in English. And of course, Dr. Saidu, he understands Arabic. And if you're asking in English, for example, I'm going to ask in English, then our translator Ala, he will translate into Arabic, and so Dr. Saidu and others will get in Arabic. If for those who are here, you can click. There's a button here. You can click in English or Arabic. Also, Dr. Saidu, if you want to hear English Arabic translation, there's one button on the right corner, English or Arabic. You can see interpretation. There's a ball, like a yeah, so you can see the
Okay, no problem.
yeah, now thank you so much. Okay, with as a host, I will leave time for you guys to listen to think about the questions. I have two questions to ask to Dr. Saidou, also from our audience. First of all, yeah, Alap, if you can translate to from English to Arabic, that'd be good for him. Dr. Saidou, you can hear Arabic or English now?
Now I hear Arabic.
Okay. Here.
Yes,
okay.
he hears Arabic, yes.
Okay. So now the first question is, what's the current challenge in terms of knowledge acquiring the knowledge and education for universities and Islamic centers and young people in sub-Saharan Africa? You can give us specific examples for your own country, like Mali, or for your own university or your own organization. Like what preventing them from getting good knowledge, good education, and good opportunities, and what are the challenges? And if there's those challenges and those difficulties, and what's your what's the solution to them? What need to be done to help those young people, those universities and centers to get more better education, better knowledge, and better opportunities? So this is the first question. And I'll just see the second question too, so you can answer them all together. Second question is about, you mentioned about the role of scholars and universities and education in fighting against terrorism and extremism, especially the country, in many African countries, there's an ethnic conflict or a different tribal conflict. So again, the role of Islamic scholars or Islamic universities or Islamic imams, leaders, let's say Islamic scholars, did they play any role in this part? Or if they did, how they played this role and to help fight against terrorism? If they didn't play, what's stopping them from play a role in fight against terrorism? Because we often, unfortunately, we heard from the news, and there's this conflict and here and there from some countries in Africa. So we would like to know if Islam or Muslim scholars, Muslim community can help to bring peace, bring stability to communities and countries there. So these are the questions from our group, and hopefully you can consider them. And for those who have questions, you can write in the box if you want, or you can just ask here, okay? And with this, we welcome Dr. Saidou to answer the questions.
طيب. شكرا. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As for your two questions, I can summarize the answer with regards to the first question. The most prominent challenges facing young people and scholars in terms of universities and scientific research centers and university centers, and what type of solutions can we offer in this regard in terms of acquiring knowledge. As for us in sub-Saharan Africa, we are facing major challenges, and these challenges are not limited to Muslims only. They encompass the entire population. But Muslims have a special situation in some countries, since they are considered, with regards to humanities, they are a little bit behind compared to others in the same country. And this is a major challenge, by the way. It's a major challenge. This is what I want to focus on. We have spoken of history. Muslim scholars until modern times used to take the initiative in terms of developing knowledge and spreading knowledge and leading the community as well. So with the development of educational systems, Muslims should also take the lead. We know that knowledge and wisdom is the objective that all believers seek to acquire. So the solutions that we propose in this regard, when we see the limited contribution of Muslims in general to the development of knowledge in some countries, that's what I would like to say. The solutions I propose here is to have programs, specific programs that are dedicated to certain categories, to certain groups, what they call positive discrimination. Positive discrimination. This is something that we need to focus on in this context. And the organizations that support knowledge and provide knowledge in high-profile specializations and majors, we need to focus on those communities where we see that the Muslim community in those countries is witnessing some sort of backwardness in terms of knowledge when compared to other segments of the population in the same country. So I propose this as a solution to provide a number of initiatives to boost knowledge and information, and then to target these segments of these communities with scholarships and special programs to live up to the other level. This is the first question. As for the second question, with regards to the role of Muslim scholars in developing knowledge and facing challenges, they have had major efforts, in particular in dealing with and facing the challenge of extremism and violence extremism, where we've been facing this phenomenon in many of these countries, as I pointed out, countries such as coastal countries, all the way to East Africa, including Somalia, and all the way to Mozambique. So Muslims